All right, it looks like we are starting to go live here. We're just a couple minutes early, or 1 minute early here. We are going to start at 9 o'clock. We have a big topic to talk about today because how many millions of people did I say? 2 million? 3 million people. So there's 3 million people who get their water from the Jardine water treatment plants. So today we're going to talk about what you need to know about Chicago's water. So today we're talking to obviously Facebook, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. So we have a lot of different things going on here. We're grateful to have a lot of you guys join us. I know Florida, Texas, California. We've had Missouri, a lot of people checking in. So thank you very much for learning a little bit about water. This topic also talks sort of about water from where you're at, because the number one contaminants in here are actually byproducts from adding chlorine. So it's still worth, if you live in Florida, to listen in today, because I do see you guys checking in. But today we're going to talk specifically about Chicago water and the largest water treatment plant in the world. That's called Jardine. So it's the largest water treatment plant in the world. Jardine water treatment plant extracts 1 billion gallons of water a day. That's 1 billion gallons of water a day. And they take it out of Lake Michigan, and then they pump it to, over 2 million people's homes. And people in the Chicagoland area all use that to furnish their houses with good, clean water. And Lake Michigan is known to have like one of the best water sources in the world, which is true. Water source is in this regard, is one big lake, one big hole in the ground, and it's filled with fresh water. So when Mayor Daley for years went, "We have the best water in the world," he was right. We have the best water in the world. However, what we didn't really take into consideration, what are the contaminants that can get into that water? What are the contaminants that over long-term use can make you, your family, and your loved ones, your animals maybe, your dogs, your pets, possibly sick? So, and I'm going to address those today. So first and foremost, the number one contaminant that everyone is concerned about when taking water out of a lake is what is coliform or E. coli. And that's because the lake is just literally just a big hole in the ground. I like to use the analogy of a puddle, like outside your house. If you look at that puddle and you look at it and you're like, wow, I would never drink my water out of it. Well, it's no different than Lake Michigan. It's just one gargantuan puddle on the face of the earth. And so a lot of things filter into it. The number one thing that filters into that water is coliform and nitrates, farm runoff. That's the cow's waste that actually, as it rains, it gets into it melts and it gets into streams and rivers that flow into Lake Michigan. But more importantly than that is the city of Chicago itself. The city of Chicago itself, in 1/4 inch of rainfall, produces something in the order of 2 billion gallons of raw sewage that goes back into the lake. So that means that and that's because the way that the city of Chicago was designed, was built, was that they combined both the downspouts in the storm sewers and the raw sewage together, and they went to send that to a water treatment plant on the south side. Now, when they did that, that means that the rainfall and raw sewage gets combined together. And they've been working on the deep tunnel project for I don't know how many years. It's far from being completed. And the goal of that was to be able to take away a lot of that raw sewage and that storm water. And unfortunately, it's still not. So we get lots of backup of raw sewage into Lake Michigan. And that water gets mixed with our drinking water. And so that's part of the reason why the city of Chicago chlorinates the water. They add chlorine to the water to kill that bacteria, that human fecal matter that gets back into that, the animal fecal matter that gets back into Lake Michigan. In fact, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin in the 90s, several people died. Usually it's the elderly or the infants from not treating the water correctly with chlorine. And that's because we had a huge amount of rainfall and the farm runoff, the animal waste got into the lake. this Lake Michigan rotates counterclockwise. And so as a result, that farm runoff migrated down to Milwaukee's water treatment plant. And as they extracted that water out, what they didn't do is add enough chlorine. So lots of people got sick, several people died. And it was a nationwide, concern. And so today, not only do we treat Milwaukee, all major cities in the world, or at least in the United States, are required by law to treat the water with chlorine. Now, by the way, that began back in the late 1800s. There was actually a case where our water, like Chicago's water, came from Lake Michigan, and we had huge rainfalls, and Chicago itself killed hundreds of people, if not thousands of people. There's no good reports. There's no accurate depiction or tracking of how many people actually died from the water. But the water actually, back in the late 1800s, early 1900s, we did not use chlorine to treat the water. And all we had was a big pipe into the lake. And we drew that water in and dispersed it to everyone's home. And lots of people died as a result of that. So it's usually the people that die are going to be infants, the elderly, and anyone with a compromised immune system. So that said, Chicago was more or less the impetus, or began the process of actually adding chlorine to water, and that actually was designed by a man from New Jersey. But so today, cities like Jardine Water Treatment Plant add a little bit of chlorine to the water, and they leave just a little bit of chlorine in this water while you drink the water, and they disperse it through all the plumbing pipes. And so you want that chlorine in the water. However, there's byproducts from adding the chlorine to the water, and we're going to talk about that in a second. So when I go back to that example about the puddle, could you imagine taking this cup, scooping up a glass, or going out to the puddle outside, scoop this water up from there, add a couple drops of chlorine, and then I hand that to you and ask if you'd like to drink it? Most of you would say, no, why? And that's no different than what's going on right now with the Lake Michigan. It's a huge puddle, huge hole in the ground, and we have, trillions of gallons of water that are there, and the Jardine Water Treatment Plant extracts that, adds chlorine to it, and sends it to your house. Now, they do a few other processes like flocculation, and they pull out some of the bigger particles out of the water, but that's basically it. It's a water treatment plant. It's not a water filtration plant. So I want to make sure that's really clear with you. They treat the water. They don't filter the water. So when thinking about this for yourself, you say, okay, that analogy with the puddle makes a lot of sense. Would you really want to drink that? Well, I mean, I know I wouldn't. And so it's worth considering, I believe, on your behalf to debate that for the health and welfare of your family. Now, by adding chlorine to the water, I've listed some of the contaminants that actually get into the water, which includes some of those. But before I get into that, I want to show you how does Lake Michigan actually get polluted. You can see we have pesticides. Imagine all the farm fields up in Michigan, and even in Illinois, Wisconsin. We have, all these, even in down in Indiana, we have pesticides, herbicides that actually are on the ground. They get into the streams and rivers, and then they migrate into Lake Michigan. So that's a gigantic concern about how we pollute Lake Michigan. We have farm runoff, as we mentioned. We have raw sewage from Chicago, from Milwaukee, other major cities. We have industry polluting the water. I mean, they pay for permits. You have BP Amoco, who pays annually to dump their byproducts into Lake Michigan. I mean, that's just kind of disgusting. They put it out there, and they believe that the solution to pollution is dilution. So they think with the trillions of gallons of water that's out there, that it's just getting diluted. However, this is something you need to be aware of. You need to ask yourself, is that a concern to you? You have U.S. Steel. They pay to dump their hexavalent chromium-6 into Lake Michigan. I mean, they've been caught by the University of Chicago college students. These are students who went back and just extracted some data, and as they were reading through the data, they found out from the EPA that BP Amoco in one day dumped an entire year's worth of hexavalent chromium-6 into Lake Michigan, and nobody told the public. Nobody told the public. In fact, the EPA at that moment still did not even punish them from what I understand from the report. So there seems to be this collusion between industry and our government. And I can't speak to it because I don't know for sure. The one thing I know is I don't know. But I mean, it sure looks like it by the way that, 1 year's worth of hexylvalent chromium-6, which is, by the way, if you are not familiar with that, it is worth your investigation. That's what that movie Julia Roberts won her Best Actress award in, and it was called Erin Brockovich. And Erin Brockovich single-handedly basically helped discover that this contaminant, that this chemical compound was arguably one of the most toxic things for humans. It's awful. And if it wasn't for her work, we wouldn't probably know. It wouldn't be as well publicized right now because the EPA thinks that hexylvalent chromium-6 is okay for your body. So in the early 70s, the government and the scientists thought that hexylvalent chromium-6 gets converted to hexylvalent chromium-3 and is digestible in your body, and that's healthy for you. Well, they were wrong. And Erin Brockovich studied that. She proved that. And she defended several people who got very, very sick from that. They got cancer from that. And here we are dumping that into Lake Michigan. And I just say to myself, oh my goodness, does that even make any sense? So my job is to make you aware of these. And from there, if you're just aware of it, then you'll ask yourself, do you want to trust the bottled water companies that don't take that out? Do you want to trust the water that comes from the city without filtering it? It's your call. It certainly meets an EPA standard because hexylvalent chromium-6 isn't regulated yet. So it's worth your thought as we talk about that. Then you have coal-fired power plants. Lining Lake Michigan are coal-fired power plants. And what are they dumping to Lake Michigan? Anybody know? I mean, it's mercury. Mercury, the byproduct of burning coal is mercury. This is why in many cases, if you're a fisherman, you know that you can't eat all the fish from Lake Michigan, especially the fish that sit on the bottom of the lake, because they get so inundated with mercury, you really shouldn't eat them. If you do eat them, some of them, you have to limit yourself to how many you'll eat in a month. And so to me, it's just like, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And yes, we have coal-fired power plants lining all of Lake Michigan. So it's worth your investigation and understanding about this pollution. The last item that I'd like to bring up is plastic, because I just would love it if the world would stop using plastic for plastic water bottles, for Coca-Cola, for your beer, for whatever it is, because plastic, there's 22 million pounds of plastic that enter Lake Michigan every year. 22 million pounds of plastic. That eventually breaks into smaller pieces, and that becomes the microplastics that everyone is talking about. They say that almost all of us have microplastics in our body already. And it's toxic, it's bad. It's so bad for us. So I want to make you aware of that, because I hope that as you become more aware of that plastic that's entering our Lake Michigan, that maybe you'll reconsider buying plastic water bottles, and possibly, if you trust Lake Michigan water, fill it up in a stainless steel bottle and take it with you. If, however, you want a little bit cleaner water and you'd like to drink that water droplet just as completely clean as possible, then maybe you'll get yourself a water filter system. There's a lot of great ones out there, and we'll talk about those in a second. But again, I look at this water droplet and I say to myself, I want you to understand what happens is a water droplet, it is the biggest party bus on the planet. Everybody wants to jump on board. This is a natural solvent. It's actually, look at what it did to the Grand Canyon, right? As this water droplet travels around, things jump on to the water droplet, and then it gets treated with chlorine when it goes to the water treatment plant, and then it comes to your home. Now, arguably, we want to understand what's on that from this program. So what's on this water droplet in the Chicagoland area? First of all, I'm going to use a water report that's produced by the Environmental Working Group. The Environmental Working Group uses the Freedom of Information Act to access all the water in the United States and then report it to the public in a easy to understand format. And that's because we all get a water report from the city of Chicago or from our water authority, and we go to read it and we're like, I don't know what it says. You almost need to have a college +4 to understand what that means. And it's just like, I don't even know what all that means. And so I'm going to try to make it as easy as possible, and I'm going to describe to you what they are. So first and foremost, dry bromodichloromethylene. Okay, these are hard words to say, right? So bromodichloromethylene, now that is, according to the Environmental Working Group, they believe that's 127 times the level that it should be for good human clean water. Okay, 127 times. Now, it meets the EPA standard, but in their opinion, it's 127 times the limit that should be set for humans. Now, that's a byproduct of adding chlorine to the water. Most of them actually are. Second is chloroform. Same thing, it's chloroform. People are like, really, chloroform? Yes, chloroform is in the water. Again, a byproduct of adding chlorine to water. Third, chromium, hexavalent chromium 6. This is what we talked about just a few minutes ago. It comes from U.S. Steel dumping many other, it's many industries dump hexavalent chromium 6 into the sewage, into their water treatment plant. They did this for years, which backed up into Lake Michigan. That's how it got so high. So we have hexavalent chromium 6. That's what that movie Erin Brockovich story was about. Again, we're 10 times the limit that the EWG thinks should be healthy. Dibromoacetic acid, that is 19 times. Again, a byproduct of adding chlorine to water. When you look at dibromochloromethylene, 13 times. Again, a byproduct of adding chlorine to water. Haloacetic acid, adding chlorine to water, you get that. Nitrates comes from that farm runoff up here. The animal waste from farming. So these things actually get in, that nitrate actually gets in the water. It's from fertilizers as well. So we also have what's called radium 228 and 226. If you followed some of my videos, this is a really big subject for us in the Midwest because we have a huge amount of radium 228 and 226 in our water. So what that is underneath our feet, there's radium that is actually trying to get through and get back out the atmosphere. And as it percolates through the earth, it is traveling through that water. It is attaching itself to the water molecule. Radium causes cancer. In fact, all of these things cause cancer. So we can't say for sure drinking it will give you cancer, but we can certainly say long-term exposure puts you at risk from that. That's why, by the way, the President Obama actually commissioned the best doctors, some of the best doctors in the world, and he wanted to know what Americans can do to prevent cancer. And in that article, or that big 300-page document, they said one of the best things you can do is actually filter your tap water. So, and obviously, we can see what we want to filter right here. You have, in addition to radium 228 and 226, you have nitrates and nitrates again. Again, farm runoff. Total trihalomethylenes, a byproduct of adding chlorine to water. And trichloroacetic acid, again, a byproduct of adding chlorine to water. Now, you can see 45 times, 144, 2.5 times, radium 228 and 226, 13 times the level that the EWG recommends. EWG is Environmental Working Group again. You can find them at ewg.org. There you can look for your drinking water. You can click on a zip code, enter your zip code, and you can see what it is. But basically, all of Chicagoland, this is what you're going to see. All of us are getting the same water. I live in Chicago, so that's why, I'm passionate about trying to educate each and every one of you about what you're consuming. There's about over 2 million of you out there that are drinking this water, and arguably, it's worth understanding it so you can make an educated decision. So that's all I want to do is teach you enough so that you can make an educated decision. Either you say, yes, I'm ready to drink this water and it's good to go right out of the tap, or do you want to filter it and get this water droplet the way that Mother Nature or God intended it to be without anything on it. And the way to do that is simply to filter water. And to us, we recommend systems that are going to be NSF certified to take out those contaminants. These contaminants, if you take a note of them, they will help you direct you to the right filter system that is certified to take that out. Again, I highlight certification because most of these require reverse osmosis technology. So a bottler, and for instance, we bottle 5-gallon bottles of water, just like a lot of other companies. And as much as we love bottled water because it's very profitable for us, we've seen the future. The future is not in delivering you bottled water, using natural precious resources to drive it to your house, put it on your doorstep, and have you drink that water. We can do a much better system under your kitchen sink, and it takes all these contaminants out and makes your family more healthy. It costs you a lot less money than us delivering you water. I mean, we're talking the average family of 4 spends $100 on bottled water per month. We can get a system under your kitchen sink, or you can find one online some people will even rent them to you for $25 a month. So who couldn't use a savings of over $800 a year and spend that on a trip, or spend that with your family, or go on a nice vacation with that after a couple of years? Those are some of the things that we would sort of urge you to take a look at, because there are some amazing systems out there right now that actually will help you take these contaminants out, get this water droplet back to its original state, and make your family more healthy, and not expose you to cancer-causing contaminants. The one thing that we can all agree upon is that this is in the water. We can also agree that those contaminants cause cancer. Now, the difference is that some doctors and scientists think a lower level is more healthy for us, and you have the EPA who thinks this higher level is okay for us to drink. You, as the consumer, have to make your decision. Which level do you want? When I go out and talk to customers, I talk to anyone on the phone, when I describe what these are in their water, I simply ask them, do you want those in or out of your water? And as of so far today, where 100% of the people say, I want them out. It's just logical. It's as simply as logical to get that out. If you do buy bottled water, I urge you to ask the manufacturer, or ask your supplier, can I know whether or not these are in there? Ask them. You'll find, as we called around, nobody wants to say that. Our bottled water is reverse osmosis. We add minerals back to it, but we do store that in plastic bottles. The plastic bottles are BPA free, but we don't like them. So every client of ours that gets bottled water, we ask them, are you sure you don't want to look at a system that can save you money and provide you healthier, cleaner water than this plastic bottle? And by the way, it's more environmentally friendly because we're not driving to your house every month or every 2 weeks. So it's worth your investigation. I hope that today has been very, very informative to you. At least you know contaminants that are in your water. You know how the water gets contaminated. And if you have any further questions on this, if you need any assistance, please give us a call here at 847-382-7800, or you can visit us on the web at angelwater.com. There we even have a few blogs that are on Chicago water. So if you forgot what these are, go ahead, go to our website, and you'll be able to learn a lot there. It's under the news section. Again, thank you for visiting us today, this weekend. I don't think, Dave, do we have any other notes? Did I address all the concerns? Dave, I've got Dave's help here. He tells me exactly what some of the concerns some of you have typed in. So I appreciate all the notes that you've sent to us. And again, thank you for joining us on this live video feed. Have a great day.